And welcome to Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Spencer and Larry, and we're discussing the season 2 finale of City on a Hill. If you've not hit the sub button, please do so. Hit that bell. We do all kinds of different, shows on this channel. Mayor of Easttown, we're doing those every single week. Also, leave a like, comment that helps push the video. And
Brian talk
what?
about space heater that was causing problems because he could hear it, and now I'm gonna sit in here and freeze to death. So
Spencer will be cold now because he suffers for the art. For the but yeah, this episode, I think it's a decent wrap up. If in fact there is not going to be a season 3, which as of this moment there isn't, it wraps it up decent enough. But I do feel it was rushed. This season was 8 episodes as opposed to 10 from first season, and there were just certain things that just happened off. A lot of stuff happened off camera, it almost felt like maybe it was 10 episodes. They had to scale it back. That's the vibe I got. It felt like they also planned for there not to be a season 3 the way it ended, because there was a lot of closure in most of the storylines. Do you guys agree that it was rushed, or do you disagree? And was it a good ending to you?
I enjoyed the ending. I disagree that it was rushed, but I don't disagree that they set it up to where if there wasn't more, the story's still tied up. The only reason I don't feel like it was rushed is, we watch a lot of premium channel shows, The Wire being one of them, and it kind of made me feel like that, where because the last episode of The Wire, it gave you a bunch of closure, it tied up stories, but some of it was off camera kind of stuff. It just like told you what happened instead of showing it. And this was very similar. A lot of the things that happened at the end, it just kind of told you. And to me, it felt more real. Following a drama, you're expecting to see everything, you're expecting to do all that stuff. But this felt more like, especially the end when Jackie and DeCourcy were talking, they weren't in each other's lives 100% of the time. So for them to sit down and shoot the shit at the end of it and catch back up, it felt to me more real. It felt more like it was happening real time as opposed to it happening real time where we got to see everything. It gave us, to me, it felt like gave a sense of realism to it, personally.
I think I know I have kind of an idea with what gave it the feeling you're talking about, Brian.
Let me run through it literally 30 seconds, and then you can go. All the IRA stuff, it's arguably just done. Like, it was like we were setting all this up, and they're just like, no, we're gonna knock that out. The Kathy storyline. I mean, I laughed when she shot the dude, but it was just like, this is a problem. We need to solve it. Bam, it's solved. Even the Kelvin dying off, he's dead. To me, and then the Jackie sort of investigation. It was just like, you're being investigated. He goes to try and get the case off of him. It felt like that would have been a couple episodes. Like I said, it wasn't bad. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying some of the way the show's typically structured, this episode felt a little different.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was going to say. That it's not to me. It wasn't to me that it felt rushed. It felt different. It felt like last minute they kind of got a different directive, and were perhaps even told like, hey, you might not be getting a season 3, so wrap things up in a way that could potentially look fairly definitive, in case you don't. That's what it seemed like to me, because I feel like they would have wanted to leave the IRA things a little ambiguous, and yet if you look at those storylines, there are potential avenues for them to continue those plot lines and add more to it, on the off chance that there is a season 3. Like, even though it seems like they wrapped up a lot of that stuff, because Maeve is dead, but the priest still has his ties to the IRA. Kathy did her due, and she's moving on, but that could still catch up with her fairly easy. We saw that kind of thing catch up with Jimmy.
Well, and where she's going is Florida, where Jimmy had ties. So anybody wanting to find her, that would probably be the first place they look. So I don't think that it would be very hard to reach back into the Kathy storyline. And like you said, Larry, Father Doyle, was that his name?
I
Doyle?
believe
Yeah,
so.
it's
I think
Doyle.
they, they left his storyline open. So yes, they tied up Maeve, but to me, that was more of a character building moment for Jackie, because instead of rubbing it in his wife's face, instead of talking shit, to her about it, being like, I told you so, to me, it was to more build their story, because even after that happened, yes, it happened quick, but then it focused on Jackie and Jenny's story for a good little while. Like, it kept going back to them. So to me, it was more of a character building moment for Jackie, and to show, his, I, I guess, character growth, because as old as he is, he's less of a piece of shit by the end of all this than he was by the beginning of this season. So to me, it was more about that, which is what they tried to focus on in this episode more so than the IRA stuff. But they still left it open because, Maeve, instead of rubbing his wife's face, he was real super nice to his wife. But then within like 3 minutes later, he went and beat the shit out of Doyle and broke his thumb and said, I own you. So it shows that he's still willing to do whatever he can to get the job done. But to me, his growth with his family was a big story arc for this season for Jackie.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, if they wanted to continue, I could certainly see them following up on the storyline with Jackie and Father Doyle, because you know we're given where we left off, Jackie is no longer employed by the FBI, but I could see him using Doyle's IRA connections to get some intel and maybe make a you know pretty big bust himself, or to use that information to worm his way back into his job in some way.
Yeah, because that was one of my thoughts when he went to Doyle and he was exposed. Hey, I know the truth. Um, I was thinking, oh, is he going to try and play this to not get kicked out? And he didn't directly. He just was like, well, I own you. Setting up. You're right. If there is a season 3, then that's something they can do. Because the way it ends with him essentially saying, he tells DeCourcy, I am going to challenge this. I got a lawyer, but then at the end he throws his badge away. So it could go either way. Maybe if there's a season 3 and it opens, he did fight it and he won and he's still there, or he's doing private security, or who knows what else. So it did leave it enough where you could just, him throwing that badge was symbolic and that's the end of it, or they could keep going with it.
Yeah, or
Well,
it could be.
no, go ahead, Larry.
Well, I was going to say, or it could be, that one thing we've talked about in the previous season. It could be that we're seeing him on the supply side of crime. He's
Yeah.
using those connections. With Doyle. With some of the drug dealers that he's used as informants in the past and whatnot. And he still wants to feed his family. He still wants to keep the things he's got.
He turns into Raymond Reddington.
He would still need a front, though. That would be the funny thing. Like, what would he do as his quote unquote job?
Private investigator.
Yeah,
Jenny's the one making money now, singing in the church choir or whatever.
Yeah, let her. Yeah, probably let her. Do the school job she was going to do there. You'd probably, get a cover as like I said, like a PI or something, or security.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, make it through my private investigation business.
Lots of PIs and teachers make millions of dollars.
Right.
that was the other one. I forgot. It's in my note that I thought they sped through the Tony Suffering story. It was all of it, with the exception of him going to speak with Wallace, and even then, the interrogation or the report was off screen. But they say that he does get arrested for executing Campbell, was it Anton,
Mm-hmm.
and so that whole storyline was wrapped up as well. But that was another one of those storylines. I was like, damn, like every other scene there was a line of dialogue saying, "Oh, all this shit just happened. We're not showing you."
That was the only one that, to me, I saw not less of a point, but it was, like I said, I explained the Jackie and Jenny part as far as, you know, what I was talking about with the character building moments, but the with Maeve and everything. But that one, um, I I think that they probably could have drug it out a little bit longer, because then you would see more of the unfolding of Grace and like how she's fallen apart and how that's affecting Shaban. But once again, I think that them changing the focus to a little bit more of what happened with Calvin showed that effect without ever even showing uh, the cop. But on the same note, showing the Calvin stuff off screen, that one was the only one that, to me, it
Because
didn't bother me. But
I was thinking, who killed him and why? Was it a rival gang that was
I think it was because
pissed off, or was it just
I
I
think it
mean,
was little. Like it's, and I
it could have been, yeah, because
the,
we saw that he's beat up at the one point when he's talking to his mom, but yeah, that was the thing. I was like, well, who killed him?
I don't think it was anybody particular. Just because what happened before, it looked like he was being picked on, because he was just like, "Mom, you can't say you love me. You can't say this stuff." Because if it was a, a specific gang that was picking on him or something, he might have been like, he might have said something, or reach out to so and so. But I think he was literally just getting picked on, and by the way he was talking to his mom, Calvin was barely 18. Like, dude was super young, and it was his brother that always protected him. Now he doesn't have that protection. So I do think that it was just, it's a casualty of the criminal system, which is, it to me plays into the rest of that storyline, because although Grace and Shaban, they seem to have forgiven each other, but it you talk about how Calvin really was a casualty of the system. His brother was a giant piece of shit, but Calvin wasn't.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you really couldn't see him surviving too long, because he wasn't he wasn't about that lifestyle the way that his brother was, like, at all. His heart wasn't in it in the slightest. So uh, it was kind of expected. It could be anybody, and like Spencer said, his brother was the one throwing his weight around. And it seemed like, especially the from the reaction you got from his own gang when his brother wasn't there. It seems like everybody kind of knew that he wasn't really a threat. That you know, like in that arena, he didn't really stack up the way his brother did.
It was interesting. Once they revealed that he had died, I was like, another thing was this show sort of in the first season. You have the Ryan brothers, both ended up dead, um, and now the Campbell brothers are dead. And I was like, is that some kind of just part of the story itself, just sort of a symbol carrying through? I don't know, sort of a theme, an odd theme.
I don't disagree with that, though, because this show throughout season 1 and throughout season 2 draws a lot of parallels between characters, and I think that was one of their ways of doing that, because Jimmy was, I mean, he was way sneakier and a bigger snake than Anton, but they were both pieces of shit. While
Yeah,
Frank was the stand-up person, he had to do some bad things, but it was for his family. He was trying to do
he
what
lived
was,
more by a code.
yeah, and so that's what Calvin was doing. He wasn't as brave, but he was trying to go to school. He was trying to do what's better, but he was still convinced by his brother that the right thing to do was get his mom out of the project. So he was trying to do everything he could to help her do that. So it was family first for him, just like it was with Frankie. And then you have Anton, which is just it's all about money. He's just a giant piece of shit. And so is Jimmy. And it was like almost parallel with those two characters. Now they were way different. Jimmy was way sneakier and like much of a coward, whereas Anton wasn't. But parallel wise, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, agreed. You see a lot of those two stories mirror each other in some pretty big ways. Uh, as far as the consequences and the type of people, and the, like you said, the dynamic with the brothers in both seasons.
I thought that the most powerful scene in the whole episode, and it really did hit me hard when I realized what was happening. We get the reveal that he's dead, Kelvin, and we have the moment at the end in the church, and we see Grace, and she's upset, of course, and she's holding, she's got the pictures, and my thought is, oh, this is like, clearly just a funeral or a service for him. But then when you realize it was, and it was also for all the young people that had been lost for various reasons, and you see all the pictures in the church, and it was like, ooh, that shit hit a little hard, because you're like, that was sort of the messaging of, the system itself is so fucked. All these young people have died for various reasons as a result of how broken everything is, and
Yeah.
that
Yes and
that
no. Well, half those people.
well, yes, but a system that created an
Yeah.
Anton. That's what I'm saying. It's all, yeah. You're right, but exactly, the system itself created this scenario, and this was sort of similar to the end of the wire, where there's just a quick sweep of like, hey, this is reality. This is what's going on. This scene I thought was on that level of wow. It's one quick scene, but it said a lot.
I agree. It did piss me off though that everybody in there was like families of all these other dead people, and Anton, out of the pictures that I saw, killed like 6 of them, and I'm like, all these people are in the same room with Grace, celebrating her child who killed all of those people. Like if she would have just put down Calvin's picture, I mean, they're both her kids, shitty or
Well, I'd
not.
say, yeah,
They're still her
I,
kids.
I
So
can't.
yeah,
It's even that
all for
moment, and I think even the show sort of addressed that when Shaban and DeCourcy are there, and they give each other that look, and then she does walk over to embrace her, because it's like, there is a anger there, but at the same time, it's like, yeah,
yeah,
these are
everything.
mothers.
Yeah, it's one of those things where some of those people weren't necessarily innocent. Like a lot of the other gang members fighting each other, and Anton got the better of them. But the innocent girl that died, like there's some casualties of war in this fucked up system. Whereas some of them were just they're all fighting each other. They were products of their environment, which was not a great environment. But there was some civilian casualties to what was going on. And like you said, that Shaban walking up to her realized not only is that, their mom, it's she just lost everything. Like all the things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things like until you had that moment with the shot that panned across like the pews and whatnot, you had forgotten that a lot of these people had died. That there was such a heavy number of casualties this season, and and I also think it speaks to some degree of how much Grace was kind of beloved by the community. The fact that like you said. I'm sure a lot of those kids, their parents were there, and yet nobody was shouting at her or blaming her. They still see her as a pillar of the community, given all the things she's done in her lifetime.
Well, Anton wasn't, 14 years old and, product of his environment. He was a full blown grown up making those shitty decisions. So it's not really on Grace at that point.
Yeah,
Who's worse, Anton or Jimmy?
definitely
Ooh.
Jimmy.
Jimmy is a rat. I mean, we're
Yeah,
gonna.
I hated Anton. I hated what he stood for and everything, but Jimmy was worse. Jimmy was worse.
Jimmy was worse because Jimmy has like no rule set that he abides by. Jimmy's 100% Jimmy first.
Chaotic all the way.
Oh, well, you look at all the things that Anton did. Yes, he basically kind of lied because at first he was like, I'm doing this for my mom. No, he was doing it for money, but he was still standing by his family, whereas Jimmy literally threw all of them under the bus to save himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, yeah, I wouldn't call him chaotic because there was one rule: protect Jimmy. Like, and when Anton, when he was cornered, the one thing he was telling them was to let his mom go. He genuinely cared about his family. Jimmy is just looking out for Jimmy. Yeah.
Like, fuck you, Frankie.
Yeah, and Anton, even though he was not remorseful about the young girl dying, he didn't purposefully set out to kill her. I'm not justifying at all what he did, but I'm saying, in other words, he didn't like go to her house. I'm going to shoot this young girl.
Right.
Now he had no issues by just shooting wildly at shit and killing people. But
But
No, her dying. He just wasn't trying.
yeah,
yeah, exactly. But you get the feeling like Jimmy, if it benefited him in some way, probably would have killed that kid on
yeah,
purpose.
Jimmy,
Yeah, if he
boy.
killed the kid and then blamed it on somebody else and got their part of the drug trade, he would have did it. Like,
We get Shaban basically saying, you know what, the path I'm on is not working. I need something more, and what I'm doing doesn't feel like it matters. She decides she's going to step away from pursuing the political stuff, and instead she wants to go to the ACLU and work for them. DeCourcy gives her the one line where he's just like, we'll probably be on the opposite sides of shit. Um, yet again, that would be something for a season 3 to explore more. I thought the stuff with where she was sort of breaking down why she wanted to do it, I thought they gave it enough time, so it did. I completely understood where her head was when she was making this decision. But um, as far as her relationship with DeCourcy, I don't necessarily feel I got enough closure with that, or where they stand together. As with, you're right, Spencer. The Jackie Jenny stuff, I was blown away. I was like, wow, they devoted a lot of this episode to that relationship, and I feel it's the strongest it's ever been. So, yeah, what do you guys think about the DeCourcy Siobhan sort of storyline?
we've drawn a lot of parallels between their two relationships because remember they throughout this season and if in season one it was almost like they were parallel but heading in opposite directions. So like a lot of Jenny and Jackie's story throughout this season was a lot more DeCourcy and uh, Shaban in season one, where they were seeing eye to eye a lot. But then it like towards the end of season one, it started to fall apart. Whereas in the start of this season is where Jackie started trying to make his amends to Jenny. Like they started trying to get back together. So I think by the end of this, with the losing the kid, them Shaban changing her whole focus, which is what I believe would be best for her. I think that she doesn't want to do that. She kind of wants to follow Grace's footsteps. Uh,
Yeah,
and so that would be what's best for her. But you saw what happened when her and DeCourcy were on opposite sides. They fought, they were arguing with each other. And I think this is setting up, if season three happens, that their relationship will completely deteriorate. Whereas Jenny and Jackie, regardless of what Jackie's doing, whether he's a criminal, a PI, or whatever, Jenny's going to have his back. So I think it's, heading in opposite directions. And that's why I didn't have an issue with the way that they ended DeCourcy and Shaban's relationship this season because I felt like it was intentional to show that it was uncertain. Whereas the Jackie and Jenny felt the most certain that it's ever been throughout this series.
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and like we've gotten in last season, and I think towards the beginning of this one, we had a lot of Chaban and DeCourcy being at each other's throats, and like I felt like we got the resolution that we would by the end of this season. It's like, yeah, a lot of their personal issues with each other weren't resolved, but given the pregnancy and the miscarriage and everything, it's they feel like they are about roughly where they would be at this point in the series. Like yeah. Now that they're no longer thinking about the baby and everything, uh, they a lot of those old issues are going to crop back up. But that seems like more of a season 3 plot line, if anything.
I'm checking again to see if they've updated the whether it's
I
getting a
checked
season 3.
about an hour ago, and
Yeah.
it was updated today, or it said one day ago, and it said that they're still hoping for season three, but it has not yet been renewed just yet.
Yeah, this far after the I mean it's only a couple days, but still that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying. I think that, and I think I said this either last week on this or when we were watching Big Sky or something too, with they're going to have to start looking at new matrices for shows because their success is not the day they air. The fact that, all these streaming services and they all have these different avenues of how people watch shows, it's not next weekend. I would give it through Memorial Day weekend because the show is over. People can power through it over the next couple of weeks. And that would be a better gauge of how successful it was as opposed to
I
people watching.
agree 100%. Even Hollywood right now internally is trying to figure out how to, if in terms of the stock market, they want to be able to track these numbers better because in some cases they only get what they're told. And yeah, they can sort of skim around and like, okay, how many of that as far as app downloads, and there's certain ways they can study it, but for the most part, some of these numbers they don't even know, and they don't like that at all. Stockholders are not happy that they can't track the streaming. So the whole business is going to, reinvent itself over the next couple of years. But I 100% agree. Even a show like this, you're right. Your Sunday night numbers are not the end all be all. There's a lot of the content we put on the channel. Sometimes we don't get a boom of views until the weekend because people don't watch the show until the weekend. People are busy. Shit, there's a lot of shows that I myself was like, I'll get to it later in the week. So, yeah, I agree. Um, let's talk about we already talked about Kathy, but we'll run through it real quick. That scene, I laughed so hard. Like there was no hesitation. There was, the dude, the stalking her. She owed him money. He comes down in the little area, and she just pulls her gun out, shoots him, walks away. I was like, well, there you go.
I thought it was great because it felt like she baited him. Like she did it on purpose. And I'm not sure whether she did or if she just reacted to the situation, was just like, well, fuck it. But it felt like she baited him down there. And then once he came down there, she shot him and then just was like, well, time to go.
Yeah, and it felt like, it was done so coldly that it felt like a shift in character for Kathy. Like, like it was that moment of this is who she is now. Kind of that she's a person who's so cold that can do this. And, like what will she resort to if the whole salon thing doesn't work out for her in Florida,
I go back to what we talked about between parallels of characters. She was trying to protect her family. When she met him the first time, when he came to approach her, she was like, it was almost reminiscent of what she did to Jimmy, where she took the product and was just like, I'm sorry, Jimmy, I'll get you the money. I'll get you the money. I'll get you the money. And she kept all the money and then just killed Jimmy. I think she probably did the same thing to this guy. But when it came down to it, she was like, hey, my kids are coming. And then when he tried to engage her with the kids there, her face got real. It wasn't scared because she looked scared when she was first talking to him. Like she was a little uneasy. But as soon as he approached her when the kids were around, her face got very stoic and like stern. And I felt like she was going to kill him. I seen it coming. I didn't see it coming like that. But I felt like it was going to happen at some point that she was going to kill him because she felt like her kids were in danger, which is the same thing that, Grace trying to protect her kids, doing anything she could for her kids, lying, stealing, like all these things to protect her kids. Jackie killing, what's his name? Clay. That was his name. Clay Roach. When he killed Clay Roach, it was to, protect his daughter. Even DeCourcy, who was gunning after Anton, it was because of his kids. His kid didn't make it. So all of these things, once again, very big parallels between the characters. And I think that was the shift that I saw in Kathy.
Well, not only that, it's not only a parallel to Jimmy and some of those other characters. It's kind of a parallel to her husband, in fact, because like she's doing a lot of the things that you imagine he did to keep them fed, because like he was a career criminal, he had his crew and everything, And like we saw how coldly, like at the beginning of this series, at the beginning of season one, you
Yeah.
know, he killed that guard. You know, seemingly had very little emotion about it. Just saw it as a thing that had to be done. You know, so that his family could eat. You know, so she seems to have saw that this roughly the same way.
Yep.
He let him have a cigarette. Yeah, I even the line at the end where she's asking Kick, "Who are you?" And she's like, "I'm Frankie, Ryan's daughter. Who are you?" I'm Cat. So yeah, this is I agree with the whole aspect of a transformation of that character. The Benny story wrapped up pretty neatly, actually, if they wanted to. If they don't do another season, she's sort of come to terms with the different things that had happened to her. She has a nice little heart to heart with her father again. She's got a boyfriend. He seems like a really good guy. She got accepted into school. It was a nice arc, I thought. What y'all think?
Uh,
Especially be like, it was a shit arc.
so I think that once again it leaves it open. I think that her story arc was great. This is, and we've said it before, she's an older child, so it doesn't fit into the story as much as we've talked about in like Big Sky and all these other shows where like a 9-year-old kid suddenly taken in by these foster parents and some
Yeah,
other bullshit. Like,
sidebar. I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, Larry and Big Sky. Larry doesn't watch Big Sky. There's so many child characters, but they always somehow disappear from the show. Somebody was watching them. Like, I forgot the main character, Cassie, has a son. I forgot because I haven't seen him in like 6 episodes. And we were talking about how shows that are more poorly written, if they have kid characters, they don't know what to do with them. So they always try to write them out. Where a show like this, or some of the better content we see, they integrate the characters into the show because, well, they're part of the characters' lives. They're there, like Kick, for instance.
yes,
But
Kick developed Kathy. You look at how much Benny had an effect on Jackie. Like, I think that it wasn't Jenny that helped Jackie transform to be who he was by the end of this season. I think it was Benny. Like 100%, what happened with her is what gave Jackie the transformation. So her, going off to college, that is a great send off for her should they not want to have her back, but she still played a vital role. Or they could bring her in because, although Boston is a Irish IRA mob town, New York was, and not so much in the 90s, so depending on how they go through it, but talk about the Italian mafias and
her boyfriend.
her boyfriend. So that's what I'm saying is that they're both going to NYU. You could basically make it to where he's not really all that great of a guy, or his family's not that great, and they could go into that or something. But there's lots of ways that they could tie that story in and still make it relevant. But they also made it to where it's a great sentimental kind of send off for a character who had a huge role in her father's transformation.
Well, yeah, not only that, but like you said, it's a way that they could integrate, more drama into the series. Like if they run in, like I said, if they run into any trouble in New York, you could follow that, or you could have a situation where they run into trouble, and all of a sudden Benny's back home, and Jackie's wondering why she's back home. The semester's still in, and everything, and she's like you said, she's hiding from these mob guys or some other trouble they ran into in New York. And Jackie's trying to work his way around that, and not having access to his FBI connections.
Well, so I mean, they talked about that at the beginning of season 1. That's why he's famous, is he put some mob guys away. So her going to New York, they could be coming after her because of what Jackie did to whatever mob family he put away.
Yeah, definitely. A story that I actually liked what they did because it was quick, but it made sense, and that would be Jenny's because this whole idea of her father, and she gets the address, she goes to the house. I'm assuming that was a girlfriend, maybe that answers the door, and she's like, "Yeah, you didn't know. Go away." And she shuts the door in front of her, and I was like, "Yeah, that feels about right." And to be completely honest, because what I thought was going to happen, I thought she was going to kill him. I thought that's how the season was going to end. I thought she was going to go in there and she was going to shoot him, and then that was going to be something that Jackie would have to deal with, and that's where my brain was going. And but I was fine with it not going that way. What did you think about it? How did you feel about the ending? Yet again, it's one of those where they could never ever deal with it again in a season 3, or they could. They have the option.
Well, yeah, I thought she was going to. I thought she was going to try and reconcile. It seemed like she was set on reconciling this whole thing. Though I did think at some point it was going to get violent because he's still the same guy, and like I felt the character was very much getting caught up in a situation where she's making amends with her family, things are going well, and she's trying to contact the worst of them, thinking that, well, I can do the same thing with my dad. We can fix this situation. Not realizing that some people can't be fixed. And that, like you said, like maybe Jackie would have to clean things up. Maybe she would have a fight with him herself, and they'd have a falling out, or maybe he'd attack Benny the same way that he attacked her. It could have gone a number of ways, but I feel it went where it went, likely because as we said again, they were uncertain of the potential for season 3, so they wanted all the plot lines wrapped up in a way that even if you don't get another season, you can say, well, this is sort of a resolution. It's realistic. He doesn't want to see her. And like you said, it's a satisfying enough ending for this particular plot line.
What I anticipated happening was not that. That we said that they did such a good job, kind of bringing things to a close to where you got closure, but not really at the same time. What I was hoping is that she was going to go there, and this could be if they carried over to season 3. When I was talking about Jenny becoming Jackie's ride or die no matter what, if he did something shitty to her, like if he hurt her, or if he pushed Jenny down the front steps, or did something to harm Jenny, and it would set Jackie off, and then Jenny could have been like, you know what, I got this, and now he's got to cover up the dirt on her, which is what we kind of mentioned earlier. So that's what I saw happening, was Jenny being strong after some shit happening and Jackie trying to take care of it, and Jenny just being like, nope, I got it. And then Jackie having to cover it up from there. But that's still also open because, hell, they haven't. If they renew it, they literally just shut the door on her. That's all that happened.
I like the great scene, a lot of great scenes, but the one where Jackie just admits what happened, and when he starts lighting a cigarette when he's being interviewed or whatever you want to call it in his investigation, and they asked about Holly Gunner, and he's just like, okay, and he just lays out the truth. He's like, yeah, here's the reality. This is what happened, and like just the note, he doesn't give a shit. Um, it was just funny. It was very Jackie Roar, and I thought it was a great scene.
Oh, we talk about character growth again. This is something where Jackie was like, look, I was trying to save her from making a mistake. She was with me. She did these things, and I didn't want one fuck up to ruin her life. And to me, that once again goes back to Jackie, his character evolving throughout this season of being less of a piece of shit. Like, he's still a piece of shit, but he's far less of one by the end of this season than he was prior to. And I think that was also pointing towards that, because he was just like, yeah, she fucked up. She was with me, which was her fuck up. And I tried to save her. I tried to cover for her so that way she didn't lose her job and lose everything. Her family, all of it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, exactly. And, that was a big part of the season, seeing Jackie, develop kind of a conscience. Whereas, like season 1, Jackie would have denied everything. And would have fought this for as long as he could and would have tried to find some way that he could get out of it. But I think also, not only was it conscience, it was also him seeing that, he was at a point where he was just kind of fully cornered. That, no matter what he does, his boss wants to get rid of him, and he's got so many things. He's got so many things that he's done that could potentially get him fired or worse. And it's all and much of it's on record that there was no way out. And I think he saw that by now. That he's like, I've done this favor for her, I've done this thing, and none of it is good enough. She's gonna get rid of me, so to hell with it.
Another great scene was when him and DeCourcy were at the bar afterwards, and Jackie reveals that Calvin had died, and DeCourcy is like, "Wow, I didn't realize that would hurt me." And Jackie looks at him and is like, "Of course it would. You're a good guy." In that moment where like Jackie's well aware that DeCourcy is legitimately a good human being, and of course he tries to exploit it every chance he gets, but. Yet again, if there's been one consistent character in terms of their moral compass, it's been DeCourcy. DeCourcy, from the beginning to the end, has always, I think, been on the path of what he truly believes. He's never. I mean, you could argue, well, he should have maybe helped Calvin a little bit, and that's what he was angry or upset that he didn't. But he really didn't have much of a way to do that, to be completely honest. Not in his position, but yeah, I enjoy in a show like this. It's good to have a character that's a good guy. Sometimes like, yeah, we enjoy the bad guys, and yeah, Jackie's fun and all, but at the same time, it is nice to see a character that is genuinely a good person.
Well, yeah, you get that contrast of the two characters, and like DeCourcy he's good. Because he's good in a way that's perhaps even unrealistic for someone who would have to maneuver the way he would have to get the position he did in that place and time. But it makes a good contrast for what we see from Jackie, and not only that, but it's good to get someone who is just kind of that Ned Stark style good guy who they don't kill off that quickly, because that was an early concern in the show. It's like DeCourcy's possibly going to die. He's too good of a guy, And you see it in these types of shows all the time.
Well, and I thought that when you say the parallels, you have such a shitty person who I enjoy watching in Jackie Rohr, but the reason I enjoy watching him is because of that contrast, because you have the DeCourcy character, and I think that they balanced each other out so well that that's what made it interesting to watch. When DeCourcy didn't beat the shit out of his boss 2 or 3 different times in this episode,
Yeah,
like, that dude's got some willpower,
right?
And then not just that, when throughout this season, he just always took the higher road, and it ended up costing him part of his career, because at the end of season 2, he was in position to move up, and then he got kind of knocked down, and then he got knocked down again. So by the time this season rolled around, his boss even said he is one of the smartest, best people that I know, but he doesn't play ball. It's like he doesn't necessarily play the way we want him to play, so it's not great, but he is very good at his job, which is probably going to fuck him over. Like, he's so good at his job, but he doesn't want to do what they want him to do, that he almost becomes a threat.
Yeah, and he is idealistically kind of a threat, which is part of the reason why I think his boss doesn't want to fire him, because his boss seems pretty self-righteous and seems like someone who sees himself as, sort of the hero of his own story in his way, as good as it gets or as good as it should get, But firing DeCourcy, that would be almost him admitting to himself that good people can't work there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. He's in The Wire, and he's literally playing the exact same character. Like, I'm not even exaggerating.
I think that he's slightly better in this until this
He's a hair.
episode. Like, prior to this episode, I was like, he's just doing what he needs to do to get the job done. And then this episode happened. I was like, nope, it's the same character.
So if this is in fact the final episode of the series, I still would comfortably recommend it to anybody who's into this kind of series. I think the journey of Jackie into Corsi is well worth the 2 seasons. And like I said, there was enough closure at the end of the second episode where I would feel like it's like a good movie ending. So do you guys agree or disagree?
Yeah.
How do you feel about if in fact we do not get another season?
I would just be disappointed because I didn't get to see more of it, but I would not be upset because there was loose ends.
Agreed, because they cover the basis enough that it is good as these two self-contained but connected stories that I would still recommend it to anyone. And even because you could say even if you didn't get a season 3, it's like, well, you get enough of the story. You get a complete story, and it's good. It's some of the best television out there currently.
Yeah, truly. The Ryan story wraps up nicely in the first season for the most part, and the Campbell story wrapped up. Like I said, when you really break down each individual character, it there is a definite level of closure, I think, in this episode. So, is there anything else you guys want to discuss before we wrap this up?
No.
You're cold.
My feet are fucking freezing. I'm standing and my feet are like right by the vent. So then I moved a little bit over to the other side and there's another vent. So then I'm like, well, God damn it, where am I going to stand at? And then one of the ceiling fans is on. So I'm like, God damn it, cold. I was going to climb into bed and throw the blanket over my head, but
Yeah.
What about you, Larry? Anything?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to call it too, because I've covered everything, and it is a weirdly cold day.
It is. I'm freezing. So yeah, we appreciate everyone listening. Hell of a show. We enjoy doing these reviews. Like I said, if you've not subbed, please do so. And we'll see y'all next time.
bye.
Bye.